My name is Elias. For 10 years, I was a saturation diver for a petrochemical company that I won't name. If you know the industry, you know the type. They pay you enough money in one season to buy a house in cash, and in exchange, you sign away your safety, your sanity, and sometimes your life. If you don't know what saturation diving is, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine living in a pressurized metal tube no bigger than a prison cell with 2 other men for 28 days straight. You breathe a mixture of helium and oxygen because regular air becomes toxic at that depth. The helium makes your voice sound high-pitched, like a cartoon character. It's funny for the first hour. By the second week, hearing a grown man cry in a Donald Duck voice is the most disturbing thing you will ever experience. You are pressurized to the depth you work at. In my case, that was 800 feet down. At that depth, there is no sunlight. There is no day or night. There is only the shift and the sleep. You are a biological machine, kept alive by physics and pumps. I did it for the money, everyone does. But after what happened at Rig 42, I wouldn't go back into the water for all the gold on God's green earth. Rig 42 was an old platform, sitting on the edge of the continental shelf where the seabed drops off into the true abyss. The company sensors had picked up a vibration in the primary concrete support leg, Sector 4. It wasn't a structural failure. It wasn't an earthquake. The report described it as a rhythmic anomaly. Something was hitting the rig. My shift was the graveyard shift, though graveyard is just a word when you're living under 1,000 tons of water. I suited up in the diving bell. The ritual is always the same. Check the seals, check the comms, check the hot water line. The water down there is near freezing. Without the hot water pumped into your suit, you'd die of hypothermia in minutes. My partner Davis was staying in the bell to monitor my umbilical. I looked at him through my faceplate. He gave me a thumbs up. He looked tired. We all did. The air in the habitat felt thick, charged with static. "Radio check," I said. My voice was distorted by the helium, but the comms unit unscrambled it for topside. "Loud and clear, Elias," the supervisor replied from the surface 800 feet above. "Drop down to the weld line at -850. Inspect for cracks." I opened the hatch. The water didn't rush in. The pressure inside the bell kept it out. It just sat there. A black, oily pool. A hole in the floor of the world. I dropped through the interface and into the dark. The feeling of leaving the bell is something you never get used to. You go from a cramped, noisy metal box to absolute crushing silence. I was just a speck of flesh suspended in an endless void. The only thing connecting me to humanity was my umbilical, the thick bundle of hoses carrying my air, my heat, and my voice. I drifted down along the massive concrete leg of the rig. It stretched down like a skyscraper built into hell. My helmet lights cut a cone through the water, illuminating the marine snow. Dead organic matter falling from the surface like dust. "Approaching Sector 4, I said. My breath hissed loud in my own ears. "Copy that," topside replied. "Sensors are showing the vibration again, Elias. It's faint. Can you feel anything?" I placed my gloved hand against the cold concrete of the pillar. Through the thick neoprene, I felt it. Thump. Thump. It was rhythmic, heavy. It didn't feel like machinery. It felt like impact, like a hammer striking the wall from the other side. But there was no other side. Inside that concrete leg was just rebar and darkness. "I feel it," I whispered. "It's coming from below me, maybe 20 feet down." "Proceed with caution," topside said. I lowered myself further. The darkness seemed to thicken. The lights on my helmet flickered, then buzzed back to life. That happens sometimes. Pressure plays tricks on electronics, but it made my skin crawl. Then I saw the damage. It wasn't a stress fracture. It wasn't corrosion. There were gouges in the concrete. I hovered there, staring at the wall. The marks were deep, parallel scratches, running 5 feet long. They looked like someone had taken an excavator bucket and dragged it across the pillar. But the edges were ragged, organic. "Topside," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've got claw marks, massive ones." There was a long pause. The static hissed in my ear. "Say again, Elias?" "You heard me. Something has been scratching at the support leg. These gouges are deep, maybe 3 inches. "Negative, Elias," Topside replied, their voice bored. "That's probably debris impact from the storm last week. Concrete doesn't get scratched by marine life. Just weld the bracket and finish the survey." I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them that debris doesn't leave 4 parallel lines spaced perfectly apart. But you don't argue with Topside when you're at crushing depth. You do the job, or they cut your pay. Or worse, they leave you down there a little too long. I pulled out my underwater welding torch. I struck the arc. A brilliant, blinding white light exploded in the darkness, sending a shower of bubbles and molten slag drifting upward. The noise of the welding was a dull roar, drowning out the silence. I worked for maybe 5 minutes. Then, I heard it. Clang! It wasn't a thump this time, it was metal on metal. I stopped welding. The darkness rushed back in as the arc died. Clang! It was close. It was coming from the other side of the rig leg. "Topside," I said. "Do we have another diver in the water?" "Negative, just you, Elias. Davis is in the bell." "There's someone down here." "Elias, check your O2 mix. You might be narked," Topside said. "Nitrogen narcosis, the rapture of the deep. It makes you see things. It makes you crazy." "I am not narked," I snapped. "I heard metal on metal. Someone is working on the south face." I didn't wait for permission. I pushed off the pillar floating around the circumference of the massive leg. My umbilical trailed behind me, a lifeline into the dark. As I rounded the curve of the concrete, my helmet light swept across the structure. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It looked like a piece of industrial plastic caught on the grating. Pale, white, translucent. I drifted closer. It wasn't plastic. It was a hand. It was human in shape, but the proportions were all wrong. The fingers were too long, possessing too many joints. The skin was gelatinous, so thin I could see the dark blue veins pulsing underneath. It was gripping a solid steel support beam. As I watched, the hand tightened. The steel groaned. The beam bent like it was made of warm wax. I froze. Every instinct in my mammal brain screamed at me to swim, to flee, to hide. But I was paralyzed. The creature pulled itself up. It was huge, maybe 9 feet long. It was humanoid, but it had no legs, just a long, tapering tail that drifted in the current like an eel. Its ribcage was expanded, huge and barrel-like, pulsing with slow, heavy breaths. Then, it turned its head. It didn't have a face, not really. It was just a smooth, pale surface where features should be. No eyes, no nose, just a slit of a mouth that ran vertically from its chin to its forehead. It wasn't swimming. It was climbing. It was climbing up the rig toward the surface, toward the diving bell where Davis was sleeping. "Topside! Emergency pull! Pull me up! Now!" I screamed into the comms. The creature snapped its head toward me. It didn't have ears, but it felt the vibration of my voice in the water. The vertical mouth opened. Rows of needle-like transparent teeth glistened in my flashlight beam. It let out a shriek, a sound I didn't hear with my ears but felt in my teeth. A shockwave that rattled my helmet. It let go of the rig and pushed off. It moved with terrifying jerky speed like a spider in zero gravity. Elias, what is happening? We are reading a heart rate spike of, "Pull the damn cord!" I felt the jerk on my harness. The winch topside had engaged was reeling me in, but it was slow, too slow. The creature was closing the distance. I could see the bioluminescent pulses moving under its skin, lighting up as it got agitated. It reached out with that long, terrible hand. I had one weapon. I grabbed the welding torch hanging from my belt. I didn't know if fire would hurt something that lived in the dark and the cold, but it was all I had. The creature lunged. I squeezed the trigger. I ignited the torch directly in its face. A cloud of boiling steam and bubbles erupted between us. The light was blinding. The creature thrashed, its tail whipping around and slamming into my chest. The impact knocked the wind out of me. I heard the crack of my ribs even over the roar of the water. It swiped blindly, its claw catching my helmet light, shearing it clean off. Darkness. Absolute, suffocating darkness. I was blind. I was spinning in the black water, being dragged upward by my hose. I kicked wildly, waiting for those teeth to sink into my legs, waiting to be dragged down to the bottom. I don't remember the rest of the ascent. I remember hitting the waterline of the moon pool. I remember the hands of the support crew dragging me onto the wet metal deck. I was screaming. I was screaming about the monster. I was screaming that we had to get Davis out of the water. They sedated me. They said I had suffered a severe case of high-pressure nervous syndrome. They said I was hallucinating from stress and fatigue. They fired me the next day. Damaging company equipment was the official reason. They billed me for the broken helmet light. I tried to tell them. I tried to warn them. 2 days later, Rig 42 didn't just have a vibration issue. It collapsed. The official news report said it was a rogue wave, combined with structural metal fatigue. A tragic accident. No survivors. But I know the truth. I know what structural fatigue looks like. And I know what it looks like when something pulls a building down. The ocean isn't just water. It's a barrier. It's a cage. And that night, I watched something break the bars. I live in Arizona now. I bought a small house in the middle of the desert. I am 500 miles from the nearest coastline. It's dry here. It's hot. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls against the siding of my house, I wake up sweating. I swear I can hear it. Not the wind, but a sound coming from the pipes in the walls. A heavy, rhythmic impact. Clang! Clang! It knows where I am. And I don't think it stopped climbing.